Talk to me about yesterday. How are we feeling about full stack? Do we understand ORM? How are we feeling about Sequelize? Where are we at? Other than making poor life decisions and having a cup of coffee at 5:35 p.m. Man, I'm going to be a complete joy in about 20 minutes. We think Sequelize is worth it. We think we just want to see a bit more of it. Do we think we understand it? Are we seeing parallels to our capstones? Good. Good. Glad there are some connections. Okay, Danny, seeing where it fits in. Okay. Trouble joining the dots with used params. All right. Well, we can do a review on that of our code from yesterday before we dive into our code today. Okay. What we are going to do, Caitlin, I don't know if you want to write these steps down because I know there are going to be about 4 people who show up in 6 minutes and are like, what do we do? So if you want to like jot down loose notes, that would be good.
Give me
Thank
a
you.
second to get a doc up and then
Yep.
go for it. Okay.
Hopefully this is becoming a little bit more comfortable for you guys to do. We are headed to week 19. We are headed to our day 1. We're going to open up our back end and delete the node modules. Then we're going to go to our front end and also delete the node modules. So delete node modules from both front end and back end. Then we are going to right click on our day 1 and duplicate it. We're going to rename that as day 2. And we're going to open both front end and back end in VS Code. Live shares coming your way. Turning my fan on because it's really freaking hot. Everyone good so far? Anyone need a minute? Okay. Penny, make sure you delete your node modules on your front end and back end. If you get both of those deleted, the copy goes through almost instantaneously. If you didn't delete them, it's not a big deal. It will just take longer. But it is certainly quicker to delete them and duplicate than it is to just go out and duplicate them. No. Cool. People watching this on YouTube must be like, he must be talking to himself because you can't see the chat on YouTube. Okay, front end open, back end open. Live share links are just sent. Once we get them both open, we are opening the terminal in both of them. So we are, it doesn't matter which order. Actually, we should do our back end first because our back end needs to be running so our front end can access it. So control tilde to open up the terminal. npm install. Once the npm install is done, we can npm start. You should see a bunch of SQL in your terminal. Once you do see a bunch of SQL in your terminal, you can head over to the front end. In the front end, we're going to rinse and repeat. We're going to pop open our terminal. We are going to npm install. And that install takes a little bit longer. And then we are going to npm start. That should pop open our front end and have all of our posts there. And Rain, so far, we just deleted node modules in our week 19, day 1 front end and the back end, duplicated day 1 as day 2, opened both of the windows up, open terminal in both of them, npm install in both of them, and then npm start in both of them. And that's where we left off. If you do not have your post showing up here, there is probably a database connection error. Make sure your Postgres app is running, open up Postgres, hit the start button, then restart your backend, then hit refresh on your front end, see if that fixes it. Anyone need help? Allie.
All right, so yesterday I got here a little bit late. I had some stuff going on. And then I got in, I'm like, okay, I could just boom do this. So like I tried to do everything. I don't know, but it keeps giving me this can't find like the read.scss.
I didn't even know that we had a read.scss. We do. Go and share your screen and take a look.
Okay. Hold on, Jaden. Okay, let me slide this over. So there's like, oops, sorry.
Yeah, here I will take remote.
Okay, there it is.
Okay, so blog front end. Your read.scss is indeed missing. The good news is there isn't much in it. So what we can do is just do new file read.scss. And then we did read, and all we did was put margin on the left of 20 px. And now it is getting sassy with us. So we are going to install the Sass. And you're in business.
Okay, thank you. And then I just gotta tweak it with all the rest of the stuff. Okay, but thanks.
My pleasure. Anyone else need help?
I do, Max.
Sure, go for it.
I didn't even know my camera was off. So I did my backend is saying panic DB issue.
Okay, share screen. So when we panic with the DB issue, we want to read into that error message after you get your screen share going. There you go. I'm going to request a remote. And it is mad at you because roll hack upstate does not exist. That means that you copied my code so closely that you forgot to change your username. So we go into DB, we go into db.js, and we change this with whatever your username is in Postgres.
Yeah,
So,
I had to leave out early, so I just try to do something before class.
not a problem. Save, come down here, you got a bunch of SQL, and if you scroll up, you see this connected to database, and you are good to go.
Thank you.
Yep. Danny.
Mine's just being stupid. I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
I did everything, but it won't show in my browser. And like I tried to Control C to stop it, to try to restart, and it won't even let me do that now. So I don't know.
I'm saying if you click down here and hit Control C,
Yeah, it wouldn't do anything. Even Bug was watching and it wouldn't do anything. So I didn't know what was
sure
going
it wasn't.
on. Oh, now it works. It just needs you to scare it. That's all. Thanks, Max.
Like when you go into the mechanic and you go, it's making this noise. I swear it's making this noise. Ain't making no noise. Plush.
So everything's working, but every time we go to the read page, it's like it doesn't matter what I click on, it's all going to the same blog post. Is that supposed to happen right now? No?
No. Let me do my trace. See if the trace fix is let me do the trace, see if you can figure out where the problem is. If it's still a problem, raise your hand and I'll come back to you.
No problem. Thank you.
Anyone else need help getting started before we do our review of how the ID is working all the way through? Okay. We are going to trace our ID running all the way through the system, because oftentimes for your capstones, you have something where you show a little preview of the content. And then when you click on that content, it takes you to like a details page about it, right? So you can think about that as when I'm shopping on Amazon or Walmart or Target or any really online store, I'm going to search for results. I'm going to have a list of all of the results, and then I'm going to click on that result and get to a page with all the details on it, right? Lots of examples for your capstones for that, right? Search results are definitely a thing, but there are lots of different ways of doing that. So what we are going to do is we are going to trace through that ID. So we start on our homepage. Our homepage says, hey, go out and get all of the posts. So we go out to our database, we go to our posts endpoint, and we're doing this find all from Sequelize, right? We're using that, getting all the data from the database. Where is that data coming from? If we go look in our Beekeeper, in our blog, we can see all of the data here. How does that get sent to the front end? Every row is its own object, and every object is in an array, which is containing all of the results. So we send that back to the front end with our res.send. Our front end gets that response, parses out the JSON, then sets it into data.posts. Okay, posts is in state, so our posts get updated. We loop over all of our posts with our map and send that down via this prop into our post component. What does our post component do? Our post component gets the data. So all of this data, data.title, data.tagline, data.content, data.id are going to get us all of the values from our database over here. So we come over here and we look, and there is a link to read/data.id. So you'll notice for the second post, ID number 2, if we go to our browser and right-click inspect on this and take a look, it will say read/2. And if we look at our third one, it will be read/3, right? So this ID is trickling all the way through the back end, all the way through the front end, down through the post component through the props, down into this link tag, and it is making that ID number 2 show up. That's just to get the link working. Well, that's just to get the link to get generated. We haven't made the link work yet. To make the link work, what we do is we go all the way up to our app.js and we tell it, hey, there's a page called read, and it is going to get an ID in the URL. We can call this whatever we want. We could call that database ID. We could call that post num. We could really call it whatever we want, as long as whatever we call it here is consistent with what we do on the read page. So the read page pulls this thing in called use params, and the use params extracts the ID out. How does it know what the ID is? Because we just put a colon in front of it on our app.js to tell it, hey, this is a parameter coming in. So we go back to our read page, we get our ID back out, and then we got to go back to the backend and say, hey, backend, I want all of the details about this one post. I don't want all the posts. I just want this one. So we go to post and ID. We use that route parameter again. Now, we could call this something else here if we wanted to. This doesn't have to line up with the front end because we're passing it into the URL right here. So on the back end, we are using that ID. We are going to the rec.params. So it's a different way of accessing the params. In the back end, we use rec.params and Express gives it to us. Over in the front end, we do our use params, and that comes from React Router. So route parameters used both in the front end and the back end, two different ways of accessing them all the way through. So we take that ID out of the route, and we use that to query the post in the database. We get out not an array anymore. We get out one specific post. We get out one object with all the data. We send that back to the front end. The front end gets that JSON, parses it out, takes that post. This post is lining up with this post right here, and it is setting it into state. And then just like on the home page, we don't have to map over it because we don't have multiple posts. We only have one at this point. But because of that, we are able to access things like title and author and that kind of stuff from there. Blush, did you catch anything wrong throughout that whole thing?
Can you just scroll a little bit up? I think I didn't just I think I may be missing like setting post to data.post. No, I'm doing that. No, I didn't catch anything wrong.
All right, cheers me. Kenny, I will answer your question after Plush.
All right. So what's happening is, like say I go to beep boop, like it's uploading, it's pulling the right ID, but it's not pulling the right post
Let
content.
me request remote.
Everything is the same.
Okay, so ID. I don't love this being down. Oh, no, that's fine. That's just wrapping. Okay, that looks right. Our app.js has the ID. It is the right URL. So we come over here. Okay, so we need to debug this a little bit because I am confuzzled. So what we are going to do is console.log the rec.params.id here and see what comes out. So I'm just going to refresh this page, and it is getting the number 3. And that should be beep boop, right?
Yeah. Or 4.
Okay, so 4. Okay, so that is correct.
Right.
Let's see what happens if we console log this out. 1 too few parentheses. Okay, refresh. Here is everything coming from Sequelize, and it is pulling ID 1 instead. So now we know, all right, the front end is doing the right thing. The front end is sending in the ID. The back end is getting the right ID, and Sequelize is being dumb and not finding it. We're like, all right, well, Sequelize isn't downloaded like a million times a week just for it to be dumb in the database. So
Right.
there's got to be something wrong on the back end side because everything up until this point has been working. So we go to our post model. I really thought something wrong was going to be wrong in here. ID. So we go look in our beekeeper. And we look at the structure. The heck? So this is a good reminder for everyone that sometimes we have to debug. ID from posts. Mine's doing the same thing.
Same thing. Okay.
So I think what we have to do to fix it, and you can blame this on me knowing so many database languages at this point that I can't keep all of the syntax in my head. I'm pretty sure we need that where query in there. So if we refresh here, it's still going to be the wrong one. But in our console log.
Should be, yep, beep boop, beep boop. True, true,
Okay.
true.
Okay, so this is good for everyone. I done screwed up yesterday. In our get query, when we are finding one, we don't want to just use the ID here. We have to specify a where and then put all of that into an object. So we have to add in the word where, another curly brace, and then a curly brace at the end with the after the rec.params.id. And now when we refresh that, we get the right one. And just to, well, I'll do that on my screen. Just to prove a point, if we go look at documentation, and I'm doing this not just to prove a point, but to say that, hey, when you guys are working on your capstone, there are going to be things that we haven't covered in class, right? Reading the documentation is a very important thing. So if I go to the getting started link and go down to model querying basics, you'll see the create. We learned about that. And then if we go down to the simple select, you'll see they're saying find all. Okay. But then there are things like attributes that we can say we don't need all of the data back. We just need these couple columns. That's going to be the select part of the query. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, it's going to have a applying where clauses section, and it will show you, hey, you need this keyword where before you pass in the additional fields that you're filtering down to. So I use Mongo at work, and Mongo does not use the where query. You just pass that in, and then the second parameter is any options that you want to apply to that query, like attributes or stuff like that. So Sequelize, though, requires that where keyword. So again, in your code, you will get the same post. You'll get the first post no matter what one you click on, unless in your server.get post ID, you add in a very important where and the object around it all. Kenny, is anyone else's backend live share not updating for them? Never mind. Okay. Any other questions? Anything to review? Reminder that this is your basis for your capstone. If you guys have not started a backend for your capstone yet, follow this template, right? Next week, I posted the requirements for next Thursday's capstone check-in. We want to see something going full stack through the database, right? Front end needs affectionate, maybe some form values, maybe the user clicks on something, whatever it is, we want to see that flowing from the front end to the back end to the database. Sequelize is an optional component on this, but one that I highly recommend using. You have that data save in the database, and then You also want something on your front end that is getting that data and making that data show up, also probably from a map. So that is the requirement for next Thursday's check-in. The only exception to that is if you are using a third-party API, I'll kind of let that slide, but you really should have your own API built out, up and running for next Thursday. Tomorrow, Ryan is coming in and is going to teach you all about Clerk and how to get a login screen working. So that is coming down the pipeline. Tonight, we're going to get a little bit more experience. We're going to make an update page work, and we're going to get our delete button working. And then we will probably have enough time to also do comments so that we can see how, if you have a page open, how can we relate comments together and still set up yet another model in the database. Yes, Ali, and we already are doing that. So in our new post, we have multiple groups, right? So we've got our title, our content, and our tagline. We submit that via a form that goes to the backend. The backend takes all of the data in the body and creates one new post, and then we can see that post as one entity in the database. What we are going to set up tonight, though, is how do we create a comments table and relate the post ID to the comments table. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it was like kind of common sense. I don't know.
Yes, Kenny, we will be using a foreign key and something called a relationship in, I think they call them relationships in SQLize. We could dive in. Okay. We are going to get started with our delete. So I'm going to open up my AB post, and I have my delete button, but if we look at our front end, you'll see it's all commented out. Well, everything we're doing here is with local storage and a filter and all of that stuff. We don't need any of that anymore. So we are going to delete out everything in our delete post. We are going to say, hey, we need to make this async because we can't do an await without the async. Then we are going to await our fetch to our local host 3011. And actually, we're going to get a little fancy here. Detour. We are putting our local host 3011 right here. We are putting it up here in our make API call. We are putting it in our home.js. And all of that's fine. But what happens when you go to deploy this? All of a sudden, you're not on localhost 3011 anymore. You're going to be on blog.mydomainname.com. Well, wouldn't it suck to have to go through and manually go change everywhere where this API URL is being used? We can actually solve that. What we're going to do is we're going to right-click on our SRC folder, make sure it is going inside the SRC folder, not outside of it. And we're going to make a new file called API URL.js. It is highly recommended that you do this for your capstone, because when Nathan comes in a week and a half and is deploying your capstones, he's going to have to change that API URL everywhere in your code, right? So it is a good practice to move this out into one file and use it everywhere. So what we are going to do is we're going to say, hey, our const API URL is equal to our localhost 3011. And down the road, you'll actually learn how to do like if statements and environment variables. So this automatically changes on your deploy and all of that stuff. But then we are going to export our default API URL. Casing matters here. So if you don't like it all in caps, you can lowercase it. Just be consistent with whatever casing you're picking. Once we get that API URL set, we can go to our home page and import our API URL. And then in our use effect, we want to change it to a template literal. So what we can do is just drop in our API URL here. Then we will be good about on the read page where we also use the API URL. We're going to update that here. And we're also going to update that here. That now means that when we change our API URL in here, every place that we use that API URL will automatically be updated for us. Make sense as to why we need that? Well, I guess we don't need it, but makes it easier down the road. When we deploy, that localhost 3011 will actually turn into our domain name. Moving it out into that JS file makes it easier to dry ourselves out a little bit. Don't repeat yourself. Okay. Oh, I had an extra 1 in my make API call up here. If you have a 1 in there, delete that. That was a mistake. Okay. Now in our delete post, we can say post. We can throw in our ID. And because we already are using ID from our router up here, we don't need to go through defining use params and all of that stuff. We can just reuse that ID that we already have set up. Then we are going to say the method we want to use for this is delete. And because we don't need anything in the body, because we are using that route param, we don't have to do our content type application JSON or body or JSON.stringify. We can leave it as is here. We're going to head back over to our backend. We are going to make a server.delete. That is still going to use our post, is still going to use our ID. We are going to async our rec and res. We are going to res.send something empty back. Then we can say, hey, our post, we are going to await our post.find one, where the ID is our rec.params.id. And then we are going to await a post dot, and I can't remember this off the top of my head. I believe it is destroy. Model instances, deleting an instance. And yes, it is dot destroy. Await our post.destroy. And then just res.send something back to the front end. I'm going to take a break in 1 minute. Res.send that there. And then finally, in our front end, we also want to do this thing called navigate to, which is going to come from our use navigate. Again, this is getting imported from the router. This is a better method to use in React than our window.location because it's letting the router control the switch out. And then the last thing we're going to do is navigate back to the home page. And then if you want to get a little fancy, you can do something like if window.confirm, are you sure you want to delete? Now we go to Chrome, we go to React, we refresh. We've got this post. I hit delete post. It says, are you sure you want to delete? I hit OK. Takes me back to the home page and it is deleted out. Pausing there, everything we have done is on the screen. We added in our use navigate to the import. We put in this navigate to. We navigate to down here in our delete. We do an API call to delete everything out. Then over in the back end, we created this server.delete here where we find the post, we destroy it, and then we res.send everything back. I am launching a poll just to see where you guys are at. Make sure you have plenty of time to work on that.
Max.
Mhm.
So I was trying to fix whatever, and so it's giving me an error saying that use navigate is not defined, but I did.
Make sure you have the import up here and that you've got this use navigate right here.
Okay, I just didn't have one up in the other one. Okay, thank you.
Yep. The sunlight is hitting my laptop screen like just perfectly, and it is making all of the dirt on it so apparent. Go scrub it. It's like every speck of dust and yeah.
One more question, Max. Should so for the back end, you only added the server dot delete, right?
Correct.
And should my stuff in the terminal look similar to yours?
After you go to the browser and click on a post and hit the delete button, it should.
Good, thank you. Another question, Max.
Shoot.
Since I hit delete, never mind.
Did you figure it out, or was that a complete question that I missed?
I was trying something before I ask it. So
Okay.
once I hit delete, I see it comes up in the terminal, but it doesn't delete from the web page. When I pick go back home, is it supposed to be doing that?
No. Share your screen.
I'm gonna bring. Oh, I think it's still loading. Probably that's why.
Uh,
I clicked on this one.
that's not good. Let's try closing this and reopening it. And then when we click on read more, that's working. And then delete and okay. Okay, so it was just some weird closeout. We open it and everything's working now. So you're good to go.
Thank you.
Anyone need another minute? Anyone need help? Or we keep going here. In Berlin, what's up?
Okay. Before I was able to read my post and now I can't read it.
Okay.
Sure. I have to go reopen it. Google.
Okay, failed to fetch. Let's switch to your back end. Okay, so app crashed. And if we scroll up on the error message a little bit, it will tell us rec is not defined. That means that right here, it's trying to use rec and it can't find it. Because we are resting instead of wrecking.
Okay. And the one above, or there was another one. Yeah, you got it. Okay.
Well, let's see. I'm gonna let you switch to wherever your front end is in the browser. And read more. And delete. And okay. And it's gone.
Thanks.
Good work. Anyone else need help? Randy, your virtual background is trying to hide Taylor and it is failing.
I was gonna say he's like appearing like a god in like the background or something.
I mean, I'm not, no shame, right? Like, totally fine, but Corin, what's going on?
Just what new things have we added into the back end?
The only two things we added in the server.get, we added in this important word where and another curly brace going on here. And then we also added in this entire server.delete.
Okay. And was that it for the back end?
For the back end, that's it, yeah.
So it was all front end today, huh?
A little bit of both.
Was there anything that I should focus on with trying to, because I missed the first 30 minutes.
Once I would just throw this where in right here and the extra curly brace around it. And then the delete is really the only additional thing that we added in. We're about to do an update cycle and a comments. So you can just follow along with those. But the delete functionality just won't work until you catch up the stuff that we did in the first half of class.
Matt,
Alright.
Yes.
so with where, just to repeat what you said earlier, that is related to SQLize. And when I see where, I think of like attributes, like when we did the input type value and stuff like that, but you use a different word. What was that word again? So I can write it down.
Attributes?
No, you said something else earlier. And I remember I was saying in my head like attribute, but use a different term. I've been really working on my terms.
Sorry, I don't know what term it would have been.
Oh, darn it. I'll watch the video over.
Ask your question again.
Okay. Earlier you had said that where is synonymous with SQLize.
Yes.
When I saw when you first showed it to us, I was thinking of attributes like when we did input type value and all that stuff when we did that button with the Yeet project. You remember we did like the on change event. No, it wasn't text. I will watch the video over, and as soon as I get the word, I will explain to you and define it. How about that? Okay,
Sounds
cool.
good.
All right. I just have I think it was param. No, it wasn't param, but he did use that word when he was explaining it. But again, I'll watch the video.
Querying?
It could have been, but again, rewatch, define.
Let us know.
I just have a question about can you just do like a quick like overview of the API URL?
Yes. So we use this API URL in a bunch of different places, right? We're using it in our fetch here to get the data. We're using it in the delete post. We use it on the home page. Well, that's all fine because right now it's all localhost 3011, right? But when you deploy that, it's not going to be localhost anymore. It's going out over to the internet. So that would be a pain to have to change it in all the places. So instead, what we do is we make this new file called API URL. We define it as a variable, and then we export that variable right here. Because we are exporting it on our read page, we can import it, and then we can use that in our template literal so that when we update it just in this one place, it will update all the different places we're using it.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, that's good.
Brandy, did you need help?
I think I fixed it.
Okay. Anyone else need any review? Anyone else need help? API URL is a file, not a folder. API URL.js. Whenever it has a file extension, it is not a folder. We good? Okay. Kind of feeling comments before we do edit a post. What are you guys thinking? Matter to you? Okay, let's do comments then. This is code that I have not written before, so it may be a little bumpy as we go over it. Probably a good idea to red light, green light this. So red light for now, don't follow along. Just make sure that you're understanding it as we are going. But I will green light and then you guys can catch up. So I am going to head to my db.js. Red light, don't follow. I'm going to make a new file called comment.js. And then I'm going to take my entire post.js, copy it, and paste it. This is just a starting point for me, right? So now I need to be careful that I'm updating things. So first of all, I'm going to delete out the numbers so you guys aren't confused on that. I am going to change my post everywhere, but I have to keep casing consistent. So if it's a capital here, it's got to be a capital here. And if it's a lowercase here, it's got to stay a lowercase, right? So I'm going to say comment with a lowercase c, comment with a capital C. And then I need to think about what fields I need in my database to make this work. Well, I still need the content of a comment, and I still need an ID of every comment that gets added to the database. But I also probably need to keep track of two more things. I should probably keep track of the author. And for now, we're going to make this a data type .string. We're going to let the user type in whoever created that comment. Down the road, we would change that from an author as a string to a user ID, right? Because whoever is signed in, we want to keep track of the signed in user who is creating that comment. But for now, because we don't have authentication set up yet, we're just going to leave that be as an empty text box for them to type in. But a comment isn't just going to be a comment somewhere on my blog. The comment is going to be related specifically to a post that I am commenting on. Because of that, I am going to create something that is a post ID that says data types.integer. ID, we are not going to use this ID specifically. We are going to use the ID over in the post to keep track of what comment that comment is being made on. So I'm going to save that, green light, go ahead and create your comment.js. Go ahead and get this set up. If you want to copy and paste this, I'm okay with that. If you want to type it all out, that is also totally fine.
I have another question.
Shoot.
So the way that we're writing the code now, like I know that we're using like our own local. So when we do our API calls, like if we're deploying stuff from our own website, so for me personally, like with the post, like I know they'll go to the database and stuff like that, but what about like increased site traffic? Like, will like I know it's like beginner projects, but like what if, I don't know, let's say one of us deploys our website and like a bunch of people just start using it. Like how?
What you're asking about is called scaling. When you have a lot of people accessing your app, you have to scale it, right? So down the road, you would need to set up like multiple servers and a load balancer so that when everyone was requesting your website, the servers had enough bandwidth to be able to serve everything up. And then you would also need to start identifying where are our either bottleneck or choke point, right? What is actually slowing down? Is it the database that can't keep up with all of the data coming in? Is it the front end that just can't serve up the React app? Is it my API server that is just having so many calls coming in, it can't save all of that data? That is where you start running into needing to scale. And that tends to be more of a DevOps thing. But it could be on the developer as well to say, hey, this code that you wrote isn't particularly efficient. We need to get better at that. With that said, it would take maybe 1,000 concurrent users for that to start to become problematic for you, even on a smaller couple dollar a month server. So it's not something that you really need to worry about right away. But if you have a site that tends to be that successful, you also tend to have some income where you can hire a DevOps engineer or hire a team to help you on that.
All right. It didn't really have anything. I just was thinking about it like while we were doing all this.
The good news is we are going to teach you AWS. AWS is one of the most scalable cloud platforms out there. In fact, a lot of web conferencing apps, WebEx, BlueJeans, couple other ones, when the pandemic hit, for the first week or two when everyone was in lockdown, they were crashing left and right because their infrastructure wasn't really set up for everyone who was working in an office to start using video conferencing. However, what didn't crash was Zoom, because Zoom had architected all of their code on AWS, and AWS was able to scale up so well that Zoom ran into a lot less issues that WebEx did. Or other platforms. I'm not trying to throw WebEx under the bus.
That's really funny because I'm like, wow, Zoom is really popular. And it was really only one of those things that was kind of like ooh, or like strictly for like work purposes if people were doing like work meetings. And then it just was everybody has Zoom, every classroom has Zoom, every work office or workspace has Zoom. Yeah, and it completely beat out Skype. So funny.
Skype was dying a long, painful death before the pandemic. I knew the pandemic was like going to be a big thing because we were fully remote at the startup I work at for like a year and a half before the pandemic hit. And so when a bunch of layoffs started happening for the pandemic, when companies were like, oh, our developers are working on projects that are like 9 months out, we'll get rid of them first. We were hiring while those layoffs were happening, and a lot of applicants that we were interviewing were like, well, how do you do remote? Because my last company, it was like a complete shit show when everyone went remote. And I was like, oh, well, I can tell you how we work remote, right? Like, we do a Zoom call every morning, and these are the platforms we use, and we're set up with Slack, and this is what our 9 to 5 work looks like, and all of that kind of stuff. But it was kind of interesting because at one point I was like FaceTiming my parents, and my mom was like, have you heard of this thing called Zoom? And I'm like, yes, mother, I've used Zoom for a year and a half, like, get with the times. And then that's how I knew the pandemic was going to be an actual thing, was because of that. Sorry, a little tangent. Everyone good? Anyone need help? Got our model set up? Okay, quick red light, green light. Red light, we got to get our server.js set up. So we go to our server, we go up to the top. We are now, nope, db.js, sorry, wrong spot. I'm going to import my model from my comment.js. Do not use your autocomplete here. Make sure you add in the word model. You do not want to leave the word model out here. Make sure you include that. Then we are going to add in our comment is equal to our comment model DB. Then we are going to go down to the bottom and export our comment. And one last thing we need to do here, we need to set up the association. And what we're going to do there is we're going to do that in here. And what we do is we tell it the comment belongs to a post, but it needs to know how it belongs to that. So we say the foreign key that it is going to use is the post ID. So we go ahead and save that. I don't get any errors, which is a good sign. Still a red light. I'm going to refresh in my database, and here is my comments. And I don't know if I go to my relations, no relations. Okay, no relations yet. I don't know if this is going to work yet or not, but let's give it a try. So green light, add in your import, add in your comment, add in your association, and finally add in your export down at the bottom.
So that backend is only controlling Beekeeper.
Define only.
So I know it's helping like with the whole full stack of things, but so when we did the like the comment and then we added in like the content, the ID and stuff, like that's initializing in Beekeeper, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That is, well, yes, but what it is doing is Postgres is like, if you think about it as a V, our backend is connecting to Postgres, and Beekeeper is also connecting to Postgres. So it's not actually doing it in Beekeeper, it's actually doing it in Postgres, but the way that we check on that is through Beekeeper. So just a clarity thing, because if you're like, oh, my database is Beekeeper, it's like, that's not quite right, right? Beekeeper is connecting to your database, just like your backend is connecting to the database. The reason why we need a backend in the first place is that the database can't connect to the front end directly for security reasons, right? What's ending up happening is all of our code goes to the front end, right? We can right click inspect, see all of that code. But our backend, there's no way to say, hey, go show me the source of localhost 3011. That backend code is running on your server, and unless you have edit access to the files on the server, everything in here is secure. So once you see that login tomorrow, you'll kind of get a better feeling that the user can't fake the information. But we have multiple copies of our front end, right? Anyone who loads our front end gets a copy of it. But there's only ever one API server. That localhost 3011 isn't going to be running on everyone's computers, just like the database isn't going to be running on everyone's computers. It's only going to be running on one server. So we get multiple users in the front end, all pointing at one backend. That one backend is the broker for all of the data from Postgres. And we just happen to see that in Beekeeper.
Okay.
Plush.
I by mistake copy pasted and saved the entire that post.js. So I have exactly the same table under the name of comments.
Okay, what you can do, head over to your database, right click on your comments table, go down to drop, go ahead and say drop comments, and then in your backend terminal, Control C to stop, up enter to restart, and then when you refresh, you should see the right fields and comments.
All set. Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else need help? Okay, so let's make this work. I am going to go on my read page. I'm going to scroll down, and underneath my delete post, let's put a line break, not a line break. Is it an is it an HR? Why did my brain just blank on that? Yes, an HR. Stands for header row, but I'm like, why? Sorry, my brain was not bringing that out. We are going to make a form. The form is going to have a text area. The text area is going to have oh, it does mean horizontal rule. Sorry. Header row is you're totally right. It is a horizontal rule. Thank you. But my total brain fart there. It was like my brain was querying for it and just could not pull that out. Sorry. Label, we're gonna say comment text. We'll close that label. We'll put a name on this that says content. We are also going to do another label that says name. We'll do a input type text. We'll throw a name on that as author, maybe. And then finally, we'll do a button type submit that says post. And we'll take a look at that. Ew, that's ugly. Let's throw a class name on here of form control. Shakorta, what's up?
I just want to ask, why did we not put class name in, like the first one we put name content? Why did we just use name instead of class name?
This is the name of the input, not necessarily a class that I'm trying to apply to the input. So if you look at our new post, whatever the... Oh. My God, am I having a stroke tonight?
You did it
Thank
as
you. Should be ID, not name.
That's what I was just gonna say.
God, what is wrong with me? And my post button just has a weird. Oh, that's because I put it on the Okay, that's better. So green light, go ahead and build out your form here. This is where you start to see the cookie crumble when I don't have pre-written code and I'm just doing it off the top of my head. And I even drank my whole coffee. Flush.
Is it too late to ask for a new data type, like say array in that table?
That's a loaded question.
Okay.
So in SQL, we aren't really supposed to store arrays in the database. We have something called a one-to-many relationship. And this isn't something that we've really covered yet. But in database design, we don't really want to ever store in a relational database. Non-relational database is totally different story. But in a relational database, we never want to store multiple values in one column or one row. What instead we should do is break that out into its own table and relate the data together. So the post and the comment is a really good example of this, right? We have one post that could have many comments on it. So instead of creating just a column in the post table that's an array, we shouldn't make a comments column. Instead, what we should do is create a whole new table and then relate all the rows in that table to a specific post. That's proper database design. So instead of using an array column, instead what we're doing is we are getting away with we're doing it properly and relating the data together. Postgres does actually support arrays, and Postgres does now also support JSON. So there's a time and a place for storing that data directly into the database. However, it's not proper relational database design. Proper relational database design is to split it out into two tables and then use the association, which we're going to see in a minute.
Gotcha. Also, like, what's the significance of name attribute on inputs? Like I always thought like backend uses name to store data.
Okay, maybe I'm not having a stroke. Form input name. For name. Okay, so name and ID are separate. What did we do for our new post? Our new post uses title content tagline, but it pulls that. No, it's pulling it from the ID. There is something. If we aren't making the API call ourselves, there is something to be said about using name instead of ID, but I don't know the difference between the two. So I don't know if it would work with name, and if it doesn't have a name, it uses the ID. That might be the case. But either way, because we are kind of manually making the API call as opposed to a server-side form submission, we event prevent default. The event prevent default prevents that default backend form submission. Then we go do the fetch on our own. So doesn't really matter at this point. But let's just keep going with it as is. Okay, so we got our form set up on our read.js. Now we need to handle this. So we will red light. I'm going to say on submit equals post comment. I'm going to come up to above my if statement, and I'm going to say const post comment is an async. We are going to say const response equals our await a fetch to our API URL. Make sure that we have that imported, which we do. We're going to say comment. We are going to make it a, I spelled my on submit wrong. On submit. Thank you. We are going to do a method, which is a post. We're going to do our headers as our content type of application JSON. This needs to be in quotes because it's got a dash in it. We're going to do our body as a JSON.stringify. And we're going to send in two pieces of information. One, it's the author, which is coming from the event, which I did not get access to. Event target value element. Nope, event target elements author, which I do have as the proper ID dot value, and the content, which is the event target elements content dot value. We need to finish this up over here. We're going to have a warning that we aren't using response yet. That's okay. We need to go do it in the back end before we do it in the front end. So green light, go ahead and get your post comment set up and your submit. Oh, one thing I forgot. One more thing. Sorry. We're going to say the post ID that we're making the comment on is coming from the ID from the params. So one more thing to add there. The post ID is coming from the ID of the params. No way to test this in the browser yet? Oh, damn it, Max. I forgot one more thing. Sorry. You also need the event prevent default at the top of your post comment. Everyone good? No, wait. Okay, let's make the back end part of this work. So I am going to head to my server.js. I'm going to go up to my import and also make sure I'm importing my comment. And then technically matters here, but it won't matter because we're being specific with our URLs. So I'm going to throw it down towards the bottom. I like to keep my listen as my very last thing. So I'm going to say server.post a comment that lines up with my comment right here. That is going to be an async req-reser. That is going to await my comment.insert. That is going to insert, and I want to make sure my fields are lining up, content and author. And I've got my content and author, and then I've got my post ID that's lining up. Because all three of those line up with the three fields here, I am able to say, hey, insert the whole rec.body that's getting sent in. Then res.send something back to the front end. Red light on that, not quite yet. Don't go through it quite yet. We're going to test. I come over here. I type in A and B and I hit post and I get a failed to fetch and all hell breaks loose. Comment.insert is not a function because it's comment.create. Save that. Backend refreshes, refresh my front end, type in ABC, type in A, I hit my post button. Now this insert ran. And I'm like, okay, but prove it. So I'm going to go to my beekeeper. I'm going to refresh my comments table by just closing out of all of these tabs and reopening my comments. And here is my content, my author. Now notice what's going on here. My post ID has a little key next to it, except it's a yellow key. We've seen a blue key before for our primary key. Now we're seeing something going on for this yellow key. Okay, how do we use that though? Well, if I go to my localhost 3011 and I go say, hey, go get me my post ID 1. That's all the data about my post. But we know that there's other data related to that post. We're trying to get the comments on that post. What we can do is something really cool. In this server.getID, instead of just saying where the ID is, we can also do this cool thing called include. And we would like to include all of the comments. Now, if I come over here and refresh, oh my God, if this works on the first time, it will be a miracle. Nope. Comment is not associated to post. I knew that was going to happen. Comment belongs to post. Did I do any associations in my example code? Post ID belongs to standby. Nothing to see here, just some technical issues. Oh. Maybe. Huh? Uh-huh. Huh. Uh-huh. Okay. Here's what happened. We went the wrong direction. We said up here that the comment belongs to a post. Well, it does, but we're not asking the database to give us the post of the comments. We're asking the database to give us the comments in all of the posts. So we have to change that. This actually worked. This wasn't causing an issue. The problem was we weren't asking for the post related to the comment. We were asking for all the comments related to the post. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that's not the direction we were querying it. So we said our post has many comments. Now, because we told the database about this, when we go to our server, when we get all of the posts, we can also ask it to include all of the comments. That now means that if I post something like second comment by John Smith and hit the post button, when I go look at my API call and refresh it, both of my comments are in here. And the kind of cool thing now is that if I go back to my homepage and make a new post, and I go to my second post and create second post comment, you will notice that in our API calls, that comment is not showing up for the first post. But if I change it to my second post, I can see that content there. So, green light. Two things that we had to update. One, in our server.js, in our db.js, we commented out the comment belongs to and changed it to the post has many comments. That's the first thing we changed. The second thing we changed this is one of them. The second thing that we changed was we added in our server.post comment create, and then we added in one more thing, which was in our post.get, we added in this include comment. And to test it, what you should be able to do is go open a new tab in your browser, go to localhost 3011 post/an ID, see if you have your comments array here, and if it is empty, try and go post a comment, see if it works. I am going to start a poll in Zoom just to know when you guys are caught up. When you are caught up, you can go on break and be back at 7, we'll say 7:30 tonight. Give everyone a minute to catch up. Good question, Kenny. When I see, well, the answer to the question is if it works without the gold key, you're fine. So if you can post a comment, look in the API and see the comment show up under it, you're good to go. Because I screwed that up and I had the key going in the wrong direction, I'm not sure if the key will show up for everyone.
I have an error, but I think it's just because my node mon crashed.
Okay, share screen. Crest. So it crashed because ID was added to attributes of comments, but not something. Not marked with primary key true. Because primary is spelled wrong. Okay, no error there. Refresh. No errors. Are you fully caught up, or do you think you're fully caught up? Read more. Comments. Post. No errors. So if we go to localhost 3011 and go get our post with an ID of 3, our comments are empty, which is not a good sign. So we're going to go to Beekeeper and we're going to refresh your tables, and it made your comments, and then we're going to open your comments, and your comment is there. So all of that's looking good. So something must be off in our code. Look what's going on here. We've got a post ID with a lowercase d and a post ID with an uppercase d. So I'm going to go back to your code, and I'm going to look, and you've got it right here. So that means at some point the table mixed up that information. So I'm going to go back to your Beekeeper. We're going to drop the whole table, which is going to delete everything in it. Then we are going to reboot your backend server. And that's all back up and running. Then we're going to go back to Beekeeper, refresh, and make sure you still have 2 post IDs. So there's got to be something going on there that's causing an issue. I don't really know what, but let's find out. So in our post, all of that's fine. In our comment, you've got your post ID in your db.js. You got that. Is it me? Am I the problem? It's me? No, I only have 1 post ID. You know what? We're over break. So if your code isn't working, that's okay. Raise your hand, and after break, I will come to you. And Allie, I'll come to you first after break.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. Allie, I said I would start with you. Go ahead and share your screen again. Let's take a look. All right, so somehow we're ending up with 2 columns with the portal ID in uppercase and lowercase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search here for post ID, and we're going to make it case sensitive, and it's not finding anything there. So that's not the problem. And I'm going to go to your front end and search for post ID, and it's capitalized there. So that's not the problem. So we're going to stop it. I'm going to try what we did before again. I'm going to delete, drop. Nothing's there. I'm going to refresh. Everything's fine. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to restart it. And I'm going to go back to Beekeeper and refresh. What? How? Why? Where?
Foreign key is spelled wrong. I don't know if that, I don't know why that would make a difference, but it is.
Thank you, Caitlin.
You're welcome. I'm not sure why that makes a difference though, but I think
I
that's
do.
a problem.
Because if it does, if you don't specify a foreign key, it auto generates one
Oh.
for you. Thank you. That was definitely it. Do you know how many times I've misspelled foreign key in Sequelize?
Probably the same amount as me, which is why I saw it.
Yeah, no, I got more experience on you. Definitely spelled it wrong more. And I didn't see it. Okay, so you're fixed now. So if we go back and we refresh and we make some comment and some author and we hit post, when we go to your localhost 3011, go to your post 3. You've got to be kidding me. Post 2. There is your comment, and you are all caught up and good to go. Thank you, Caitlin. We'd be here all night. Shaquota, you're up.
Okay, so I was trying to follow you while you were doing Ali. I had the same problem. My comments are not showing up.
Okay, share your screen.
So I clicked post, nothing, and then I went to my beekeeper. I refreshed.
Okay. Let's look in your backend. You are, let me request remote, request. You are missing your entire server.post comment.
Okay.
Unless
I thought I put it in. Okay.
Nope. So you need, and we can do it really quickly. Server.post. Comment on a post. Nope, you can do that. Just said comment. Async rec res. Await a comment dot create, which is using the rec dot body, and then res dot send. And then while I'm here, is this your front end? Nope, that's mine. Let's just test it in the browser. Post and insert, which is good, and beekeeper refresh, and there's your data. So yay. And we go to post number 2, and there is your comment. So you are all caught up and good to go.
Thank you.
Amberlynn.
I have the same problem, but I'm not seeing it. Your fixes fixing mine.
Okay.
So my beekeeper.
Okay. Yep. Okay. And if we request and hop over to, come on, there we go. And just close that and open comments. And the comments are in here. So
Okay.
if we go to localhost 3011 and go to your post and get your post number 2, there are all of your comments. So they are saving.
Thank you. I couldn't prove it. All right. Thanks.
Yep. Anyone else need help? Anyone else spell foreign wrong? I'm not kidding, Allie. I cannot count the number of times I've made that mistake and been like, why is my data not there? I'm like in tears. I'm like, it's all there. Why is it not including it? Associations are one of, when they work great, but when you miss one thing, it is the most infuriating thing. And part of that is because there's some magic, right? So if we look at our terminal down here, we can actually see when I refresh this page, stuff comes out over here. And this looks like a lot of gobbledygook, but let's try and break this down a little bit. I'm going to highlight this entire command, red light, you don't have to follow here. I'm going to paste that whole thing in here. I'm going to say word wrap so we can see the end of it. And I'm going to say, all right, select all of that stuff. Then we do a new line here just to make it more readable. And then we do a from and a left and an on and a where. So nice one, Rain. So we look at what gets broken down in the SQL query, and all of a sudden it doesn't look like a bunch of gobbledygook. It looks like SQL we know how to write. Select all of the columns from the post table, select all of the columns from the comments table, from posts, left outer join. Wait, we've seen a left outer join before. It was a couple weeks ago, but we saw that in Khan Academy. Join in the comments table. Where do we want to join them? We want to join where the post ID lines up with the comments.post ID. How does it know what key to line up on? Because we told it in db.js to do a has many right here. So this post ID, if we spell foreign right, knows how to generate this on statement, and it's including our where our post ID equals 1 because the number that we are passing in is the number 1 up in the URL. Two post ID that have the value 6. That is okay, Kenny, because it's a one-to-many relationship. We have one post that has many different comments on it. So it is okay. A primary key has to be unique. A foreign key can repeat. So we did all of this work. Let's get it over the finish line. We're getting this data. And not only are we getting this data, but because we have modified it on the get of the post ID to include the comment, check something else out. Red light on this still. Don't follow me yet. When I go back to my front end, when I'm doing all of this work to make the API call, I can also console.log out my data.post and check this out on my front end. When I refresh this and I pop open my terminal, I can see my comments are right in here. That is because I modified my server.get to include the comments. That means I can easily go back to my front end and in my read section, go back down to my form and do another HR. And all I need to do is go to my post, go to my comments, map over it to get my comment. And I am going to return out a div that has, I don't know, an h6 with the comment dot author and a p tag with the comment dot content. And I can save that and come over here. And there is my comment. One more thing I'm going to do. I am going to say, when I post a new comment, send back all of my comments by going to comment and find all where the post ID lines up with the rec.body.post ID. And when I get all of my comments back, what I want to do is parse my JSON and then finally I am going to set my post to whatever my post currently is, but the comments are going to be the data.comments coming back. What that should do is make it so I can post some new comment, some genius, hit post, and see my content down here. Green light. What did we change? In our server.post comment, we added in this res.send. Then in our front end, we did all of the work we updated our post comment to have this JSON parse and the set post. And finally, we added in our post comments map to show the new comments. And unfortunately, cannot keep all of that on my screen. So don't forget these two new lines up here. We also have the map down here. And finally, we've got the res.send in the server post comment up here.
Max, I have a warning about post comment, but I don't see, like, I see that I have it, but it's saying that I never used a value.
There's one thing that I know we broke. We are not putting, we're mapping over comments, but we're not putting a key on it. I don't think that's your error, but we can throw a key on this that says use the comment ID as the key. That should fix a warning we have in the console about using a map without a key. But go ahead, share your screen. Let's take a look. Post comment is a sign of value and never used. Read 34. So let me request. So we're going to go up to line 34. And remember, we want to lean into our warning. So it is saying post comment is assigned a value, right? We're doing that right here, but we never use it. Well, where are we supposed to use it? We're supposed to say, hey, when this form is on submit, we can add in our form. We can add in our post comment. And you are good to go. Feel free to test. Let me know if you need more help. Any questions? Anyone need help? Okay. At this point, we're feeling pretty good about the whole blog project. I've got comments working. I am able to go back to my I'm able to go back to my homepage. I'm able to see my content. I'm able to click read more. Got everything integrated. I've got my comments showing up. Only the comments showing up on this post. If I go to another post, I only see the comments on that one. If I make a new post and save that,
Live share.
when I hit the read more button, I don't see any comments because they haven't been created yet. So that's all good. Feeling pretty good about this. The only operation we haven't done in our create, read, update, and delete is our U, right? What we haven't done is some ability to be able to hit the edit button on this post and be able to change that content. Hopefully along those lines, you are able to think about, okay, I could do a patch query. I could do my API fetch call. I could use in SQLize, it's going to be the .update method. I can update that row. I can save that. I can navigate around. So at this point, look back at this project, look through your entire capstone, and think to yourself, what concepts do I either have no idea how to even approach other than login? Login is the one exception to that. Login, we'll cover that tomorrow. Other than login, are there any concepts that you have no idea how to approach, or concepts that you think are in the blog, but you need a little bit of help figuring out how to structure that for your capstone? Take a couple minutes, think about that. So I'm going to open the floor up to any questions here. They can be capstone related. They can be blog project related. They can be conceptual of keep on using this word. What does that word mean? It can be how do we implement a new feature in the blog? Any of those. opening it up to any questions. It doesn't have to be related to blog at all. Could be, I'm trying to do this in my capstone. I need a little bit of help. Could be something that you're really proud of that you actually did get working and you'd like to show off to your fellow students.
So Max, I have a question about my capstone.
Sure.
I'm not sure how to word it, but so you know how I'm building my API for the therapist, right? So I
Yes.
guess my question is like, is it like, do I need like an admin page to be able to maybe see what people are searching, or no?
I wouldn't go that far, but I would say, hey, we need the ability to search for someone, right? So let's dive into that a little bit because that's a really good idea. Blinking yellow light. Proceed with caution for the rest of class. If you would like to follow along with me, you can. I'm going to do this so you have an example of search if you have search going on in your project. However, this is totally optional, not a requirement. So what we're going to do is on my homepage, I am going to add in, because we did the notion of search before. We did a little project with I can't remember which one we did search in. We did search in some API, maybe it was Star Wars, I can't remember. But let's talk about making search work. So I'm going to add in a form here that has an on submit of search posts. It's going to have an input type of text. And we are going to throw an ID of that search input. We are going to say a button with a type of submit that says search. We'll throw a class name of form control on that so it looks a little better. We will drop that in there as well. Then we will say const search posts is going to do a API call to posts search. Let's do it like this. We need and I'm going to go steal this from our new post, the headers and the body. And the method is going to be a post. And then what we're stringifying is going to be our query, which is going to come from event target elements search input value. And just to make sure all of that's working, I'm going to do a server.post that is going to post search. It's going to be an async recres. I'm going to say our res.send. And then we're just going to console.log out our rec.body.query. So we threw a form in, we set up our input, we put a button on it, we said on submit, go make a new function. The function is going to go to post search. It's going to get the search input and it's going to set the posts in. Now, I don't have anything working so far, so I'm just going to send back all of the posts as a placeholder, and I'm going to say find all of the posts. Need my await because it's a DB query. Okay, come over here. I type in, I'm going to search for anything that has second in it. So I hit search, whole page refreshes. I forgot my event prevent default. I save, I come over, I refresh, I type ABC, I hit search. Nothing happens over here yet. But if I come over here, I do see my ABC. So my search query is getting sent to the back end. But you know what? All of these SQL queries are really getting to be a pain in my butt. They're helpful to know what's running, but sometimes I don't want that logging to happen. In order to fix that, we can go to db.js, and up here in our connection, we just throw in an object that says logging false. That just turns off the logging for me. So now even when I hit the search button, I don't get all of the SQL coming out. I just get the what I want to log out. So turning logging false doesn't really impact SQLize at all, but that can be a good way to help clean up your console. Okay, so in here, what we do is we get crafty with a where query. We're going to say where, and this is where you have to build out, where you have to build out, how does your search algorithm work? What are you searching through? Unfortunately, there's no easy way to say, search through it all, right? But if you think about your filters, kind of, if you're building out a filter interface, you probably don't want it to search through it all, right? You may be looking for where the flower is a certain color and where it works in a certain zone. You may be looking for a therapist that's trained in a certain therapy and also is a certain gender, right? So when you build out this query, it goes a little bit beyond what we're doing right now, but you can build this out to say where this and this and this is true, or you can say where this is true, or this is true, or this is true. For now, all we're going to do is we're going to look at the title. So what we do is up in our imports, we have to import this thing called op. Op, it stands for operators, and it's kind of the more advanced query type that we can do in SQLize. And so we're going to say find in our post search where op.iLike. iLike is not short for I actually like something. It is short for a case insensitive like. And so what we basically do is we say where and I'm going to mix up the order of this, where the I like of title is our rec.body.query. No, I split these. Let's see what happens. Come over here. I search ABC. I get nothing. There is no title with ABC in it. But if I do a search for second, I only get my second post. If I clear all of this out and hit search, I get all of them back. And if I do something like not really second post and type in second and hit search, I get second and not really second post because this includes second in it. Okay, let's break that down a little bit. Front end, form, input, button, submit, API call. Hopefully none of that is new to you guys. API call is including the value that got typed into the front end. Now, what is new is we switch over to the back end and we do a more complicated SQL operator. We say, hey, find where all of the titles are like. Now, the I means case insensitive. So in other words, if I search for second in all lowercase and second in my title is in a capital S, that I is going to say, I don't really care if it matches on case, make it insensitive. Then we use the query. Where's the query coming from? That's coming from our body over here. Okay. Now that it's coming from the body, what are we doing with it? These weird percent signs are basically a SQL specific syntax that say anything can come before this and anything can come after this. But what we're looking for is the word between the percent sign. Then we use our template literal or backticks to drop in the query that's coming from the front end. The database is going to search through all of our posts wherever our query is in the title. Then it is going to take those posts, send it back to the front end. The front end gets that data, sets it into the posts, and we see the results of the query. None of that is the question that you asked, Shakota. The question you asked is, do I need some dashboard to log what people are searching for? You definitely could. You could create a new table that says search queries. And anytime that this search happens, you could do an insert into the search queries that is inserting in whatever data they're actually searching for here. That is definitely a feature you could build. I don't know that it's MVP. What is MVP, though, is getting some search to work, right? Hey, I'm looking for all of the therapists in this zip code, or hey, I'm looking for therapists that are trained with this kind of therapy. That is something that you could approach with this kind of search.
Thank you.
And hopefully we're getting light bulb moments, because hopefully one of you, Brandy, may have a search feature that you need to build out and now have some reference code that you can use.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so when I was doing my API project for the New York Times, like I really understood how to get the API call and everything, but what I was having like trouble with was trying to get, like, after the first API call, like writing in other stuff without having to call it again, or getting other stuff to show up. Like, I'm not sure.
You have your project open?
No, I don't have it open right now, but I could open it.
Pop it open, share your screen. Let's take a look at that. Sometimes that is a requirement, right? Sometimes, and I'm just going to use Amberlynn's API. She's making an API call, right? And it's returning back like the ID of the plant, and it may be returning back the name of it. But if we want any additional details about it, we have to make another API call to that specific ID in the URL to get the details of all of the plant data. So if you are using an API and the data just isn't there unless you make another API call, there's nothing wrong with making another API call. What would be considered wrong, though, is if you're looking at the data in your console and you're like, I know that data is there, why can I not make that data show up on my screen? Then it becomes an issue of like peeling the onion back to be able to get to where you want to go. So if you have it pulled up, share your screen and we can take a look at, I think maybe having it pulled up will make it easier for you to ask the question that you were trying to ask.
Okay. All right. So here it is. This is what it looks like in the browser.
Yep.
But like, don't laugh at me. So what I did was I literally fetched and called it over and over to get this to show up like this.
Okay. Sorry, I laughed at you. You asked me not to. Let me come on. Request remote, request. Collapse this down. Okay. So what did you repeat? You went to overview. You did bestsellers, you used the number 2, and then I'm guessing down here you use a different ID. Okay. So what we're going to do is are you all right if I refactor? You know what? Let me do this. I'm going to make a new file called script.backup just because when other people screw with your code, sometimes you're like, but I liked it that way.
Maybe maybe I should just duplicate this.
this is the only file I'm gonna edit, so you're fine. I just backed it up in this right here.
Okay, all right.
So what I'm gonna do is the most horrible thing to do to any developer: delete out everything except the first one. Now, oh no, never mind. I'm gonna put that back. Why didn't we get one of those working? All right, maybe I'll delete all of these. Save. But how? Why? It needs all three of them? So confused. HTML, inner HTML, and then you do another fetch, HTML, inner HTML, and then you go 13 business books, inner HTML. Okay. Then here you did fiction business. Okay. I get it now. Okay, so what we need to do is, first of all, before we build, we have to make sure we know what we're trying to build. So you have it set up to only use 3 lists right now. Do you want all of the lists to show up, or just the 3 lists you have working right now?
Yeah, so what I was trying to do was just have it based on like selected lists, because I didn't want all of the lists.
Okay. Do you want to make it? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, I'm going to console log out the bestsellers list so I can remember what that data looks like. And it's this giant one here. And it has list name in it. So what we are going to do, okay, sorry, thinking on the fly here. Let me make this a little bigger so we've got room to work with it. We're going to say, go get all the data. Go get the lists, and I'm going to call this lists because it's multiple ones. And then we're going to say, for const list of bestsellers lists. And we are going to also get, we're going to say, if the list dot list name equals hard cover fiction, and actually let's do it this way. Let's do something like let approved or selected lists equal, and we'll do list ID 1. You had picture books, which is 7. And you also had business, which is 532. Do not ask me why it is those IDs. They have control over that. So I'm going to say if the selected lists includes the list.list ID that we're looping over. If it does include that, that's one of the lists that we actually care about. So what we are going to do is, only if it is in our selected list, we are going to take all of the lists books and get out the book that we care about, use the title and console log out the title. That's fine. Then after we are done looping over all of the books, we are going to document, we're going to say const row div equals document get element by ID row. And we are going to row div dot inner HTML add on your HTML that you generated up here. And then I'm going to comment all of this out. We need an ID of row in here. And I'm going to just comment these out because we're not using them. And then last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to start a div with a class of col. And then I'm going to add in our HTML and also add in the closing div. And there is the exact same working for all of that. So let's break that down a little bit. Before I do you have any questions on this before we go over it?
No, okay, I understand exactly how you did that.
Do you want a review of it? Or does
Yeah,
anyone
no,
want a review?
yeah. I will.
Yes?
Yeah.
So sometimes I just talk for the sake of hearing myself. So let's the data we already have, and your intuition was right? You were like, I shouldn't have to repeat this because I have access to all the data from the one API call. So how can I do that more efficiently? So what we do is we go, well, we want to loop over all of the lists, but we only want to generate it based off of certain lists in all of that data. So what I do here is I go, here are the ones that we care about. Then loop over all of them. But when we're looping over them, check to see if the list that we're currently looping over is included in the array of IDs that we have here. If it is, we want to go generate some HTML for it. If it isn't, we don't give a crap, move on to the next list. Then we go, okay, now if it is, you were already looping over all of the books. All of this was fine. All we wanted to do was say, hey, start out a new div class call for it, add in all the HTML for the book titles, and then once you're done with looping over all of the books, go get our row, and once we get our row, add on the HTML that we just generated, and then close out the div for the call that we created up here.
Okay, that's perfect. Ooh, okay.
Now, if you ask 50 different developers to write this code, they would write it 50 different ways. So this is not the only way of doing it, and I like to preface all of my code of saying that. But if that got a light bulb on, great. If that didn't, there are other ways of doing it, and you just have to say, would I understand it if the code were written a different way, or do I just need to invest more into understanding this?
Yeah, so I think I just, when I went through it, I got, like, I understood why I was, like, recalling them and having them show up the way that they were. What it was there was, like, a misconnection between, like, how to just, like, that selected list, and then how to have it so that in the HTML it would show up, like, with the individual columns. But seeing this now, I definitely had, like, a light bulb moment.
Good. And like I said, 9 different ways that 50 different ways we could write this code. But you know, the way Ryan would write this is with .append child, right? And document.create element. And if that makes more sense to you than a string of HTML, great, go for that, right? Like at the end of the day, it's going to accomplish the same thing. So whatever helps get that to click. It's kind of weird blurring the lines between your HTML and your JavaScript. But if you think about it as what is content that I want to show up, and then when do I want that content to get generated, and then when do I only want that content to get generated if what is true, and that might make it a little easier to understand it.
Okay.
Now, also keep in mind that this is vanilla JavaScript, right?
Mhm.
So we could do something similar in React, but in React, we would be doing that with state as opposed to inner HTML.
Yeah. I just I think it was nice to just have it like in the vanilla. This way, like I can just, if I want to move it to React, I feel like it'll be a little bit easier trying to figure it out, not like how to do that from here instead of like going backwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
Very
yeah.
good question.
That was really it for me.
Cool. 7 minutes left. No, it's boring to see other people's code, but you can really get a light bulb moment from seeing someone else's as well. I'm gonna leave 6 minutes early. You were offending my genius by not having any questions to inquire about. Going once. Going twice. Have a good night, everyone. See you guys tomorrow.